Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to learn about how to use ChatGPT's API as a streaming service so that your application can look like how ChatGPT generates text. Okay. So basically something like this. Hi, how are you? You see how ChatGPT generates text in step by step. So I'm going to show you how to use ChatGPT's API to stream the text the way you see on ChatGPT so that you can use it for your own application. So a couple of housekeeping things. I'm going to use React or Next.js frontend to send or receive requests from OpenAI's API. So once you understand this, you can actually use it in any programming language that can send or receive API requests. It's as simple as that. And lastly, at the end of this video, I'm going to explain you how to make your app production ready, because working on local host or in development environment and hosting your app to a production environment is completely different ballgame, okay? So make sure you watch the entire video because this is filled with a lot of new information. So without further ado, let's get started. So as you can see, I have a blank project where I have set up my Next.js project and environment. If you're not sure how Next.js works, here's the video that you should watch, and I highly recommend you do that if you want to learn the front end, okay? The second thing that I'm using in this app is Bootstrap. So I'm using Bootstrap for styling. Again, you don't have to know this because you could be building your API in Python, for example, so you don't need to do styling. But if you want to learn, here's the video that I created, and I highly recommend that you go and watch. All right, so all of that is done. Now I'm going to go to my index page and I'm just returning Hola. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go here. I'm going to say npm run dev. Sorry, before that, to make request to OpenAI's API, you also need OpenAI's secret key. So that is something that you can go to OpenAI's website, OpenAI API key, something like that. Go here. So you click on user settings, you log in. And once you do that, you should be able to create new key if you want, or you can use the existing one. So it depends on you, okay? So your secret key would look something like this. Once you have a secret key, so again, depending on your project, you should use it in your environment variable. Why and how, I'm going to explain in a moment. So let's start with that. So I'm going to say npm run dev. So this will start a local server on my laptop. Things are running. I'm going to go here and I will say localhost 3000. All right. So we see all that here. I just want to emphasize this one more time that once you understand the concept of how the API streaming works, you can take this concept and use it in any programming language. All you need to do is stick with me and understand the concept of streaming the data from OpenAI. Okay? Beautiful. So let's go here and make this a little bit more functional. So I'm going to say div, class name, container. I want a padding of 5. Okay, so I've got margin of 5, I've got padding of 5, and I've got a beautiful container. Now let's create a button, and we'll also create a text box so that we can send and receive requests. For that, I'm going to go to a Bootstrap documentation. I'm going to do a simple copy paste. So I'll go here, copy this, bring it to my code. We should replace class with class name. There you go. I'm not going to build a full-fledged app, so I'm just going to remove the text area. I'm happy with the input text. Sure. Let's make it HTML4. In text, make it smaller. Put it here and input your query, for example. Okay, looks good. Let's remove the placeholder. Lovely. And then I also need a button to, there you go, got a nice looking button. Again, as I mentioned, if you want to learn this styling, you should watch the bootstrap video that I created. Okay, lovely. So we have it. Now, when we click on this button, I want something to happen. So I'll say on click, I need a asynchronous function like this, and I'll say const response equals to how are you, and then I'll just log it. There you go. If I go here, press Ctrl+Shift+I, clear the console, and when I click on it, I should see how are you. So I know that this button is working. Perfect. Now the first thing is we need to fetch the data from OpenAI. So the way you send a request to OpenAI is by using the fetch function. So we'll say const response equals to await. So we need to wait for this response to be returned by the OpenAI's API. So we'll say fetch. And as you can see, it's looking for a URL. So where do you want to fetch it? So I'm going to give it a URL. And for OpenAI, the URL looks something like this. Let's put it here. So before we move forward, there are multiple ways of invoking OpenAI's API. One is you can do it this way, and you can find all the details on, of course, on the API reference. So you can go here, you can see how to make a request, something like this. Or obviously, you can also go and install OpenAI package, and then you can use these kind of functions. I prefer to do it via API, so that's up to you, right? Okay, so once we have that, we need to send some details to OpenAI. I'm going to copy paste and then I'm going to explain what we're doing. So what we are saying that when you send the request to OpenAI, you need to send some headers, and header content type is JSON, and authorization is the OpenAI key that you should get basically from here. Okay, so you provide the key. So it would, so I'm going to read it from my, so let's do the following. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say sk test key. I'm going to show you a couple of things why I'm doing this. And the body is kind of a payload. So let's see how the payload looks. I'm going to copy and paste the payload here. Now there are a couple of things that a payload expects. Again, go and read on the API references that what kind of data does this API needs. So the first thing is basically needs to know which model do you want to use. So we're going to use GPT 3.5. So that works pretty well. Unless you want to use something else, that's up to you. Messages. So messages should look something like this. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to explain what messages means. So there are three types of roles that you can use. So one is user. You could basically do something like this. So you assume your chat message starts something like this. You start with system and you say, with system message, you basically tell the API that how in general it should perform. So I'm going to say, you are a helpful assistant. Okay. Then as a user, I want to say, hello, or I want to say, tell me a joke. And then there would be another role, which would be assistant. So AWSI, TAN, which basically means whatever the AI response is. And this could be whatever the AI response you receive. So you basically say, I don't know. And then you basically keep doing this And this is how you basically build a series of chat messages for OpenAI. But for our purpose, I'm not going to use all of this. We're going to just use one message, which is a user which says, tell me a joke. And we'll see how the OpenAI responds to this. And instead of that, we will just change that with messages. Temperature, I'm going to use 0.1. Frequency penalty, I'm not going to define anything. I'm going to use whatever default OpenAI uses and presents as well. I'm going to remove this. Streaming, we're going to look in a moment. User ID, you can provide to uniquely identify a user in your application, okay? Again, I'm not going to talk about it because you can go and read it in the documentation. So that's basically our payload, and this is the data I want to send to OpenAI. There it is. And yep, that's it. So let's see how this works. So we will say this cons, okay? Then we'll say cons. We'll say data equals to comma. Oh wait, response dot. I think it's JSON. So okay, that's there, and then we'll say log. Beautiful. So now I'm gonna go and click on the button, and we will see what response is being generated. Okay. So go here. When I click on this, I get an error, obviously, because as you can see, it's saying that the request I made to OpenAI is unauthorized. And the error response is incorrect API key provided, which makes sense. The reason I'm doing it this way, to show you one very critical thing. So if I go back to my network, and let me clear everything, and I want to send a request again. So you see that I sent a completion request to OpenAI. The problem when you do this from your front end, when you want to do something like this from your front end, you want to expose your secret key to the user, and that is something you don't want. If I go to payload, I can actually see what did I send, right? So this is a message that I sent. And if I go to the header, I should be able to see my bearer key. And this is problematic because you don't want to expose your secret key to the world. So what's the alternative? Well, the alternative is that you move all of this to a server-side code. Fortunately, with Next.js, I do have, I can create an API route. So I could say API. So the way it works for Next.js is you create a new route within API and then OpenAI, for example, test. And then I can handle everything here. None of the code that I write here is going to be shown to the end user. So your API key and everything would be saved when you put it here. Okay. So let's see an example, and then we'll build upon it for OpenAI. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a request to this endpoint, and I should be able to receive this, and I should also be able to log the body. So let's try that. When I go here, copy, comment it out. And instead of all of this, I'm going to say fetch URL. So which URL do I want? I want OpenAI test, like this. I don't need to send this. Application type JSON is fine. And then I can say I don't know, name, GKB, something like this. So what will happen is I'm going to send a request to my own API's endpoint. And again, if you're not using React, if you're not using Next.js, it doesn't matter. All you need to do is figure out in your application how you can do on the server side instead of client side. Okay. So when I send this request, I'm not doing anything here. So I should receive OK works, and I should be able to print my body. So let's see. I'm going to go back. So I get a response, okay, works. And on the console, I should receive whatever body I provided. So now you know that from the front end, I can use the message, send it to the API, and let the API do all the thing and get back the result. So let's do that. Okay, so I need messages. I'm gonna go here and say messages as messages. Okay. So if I go and send here, works, and on the console, you should see messages. And this is all I need basically to send a request to the OpenAI. So let's do that. Copy this, cut it basically because we don't need it here. I'm gonna go here, paste it, uncommented. Okay, so the messages should be coming from the body. And let's say const equals to lovely. Going back, now we need this URL, so I'm gonna cut it. Bring it here, const open AI. Okay, and then now I can use this key right here. Got a response, I'm gonna send the data back to the user. And we will let the front end handle whatever they want to do with whatever OpenAI responded to my request of tell me a joke. Okay. There it is. Moment of truth. Gonna go back here, save it, and we're gonna run it. So we have our URL to set it to OpenAI. We got the key and we receive the message in the body. We send the payload to OpenAI, and then we just send the data back to the front end. So let's see how that looks. Again, this is the Next.js thing, the React thing, but you should design your front end, whichever application you are using. So what I'm doing is I have a variable called AI message. Initially, it is null. So when I click on this button, send request, this function will be called. It will reset the message, send a post request to our fetch URL, which is this one. And then we get the data out of it. We'll log it so that we can see what OpenAI returns. And then I will send it to this variable. And once this variable is sent, you will be able to see the data coming here. Okay. So let's see all of this in action. So fingers crossed, I'm gonna click on this button and there you go. The message that we got from OpenAI is why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything. Well, but the important thing is, look here. So I basically logged everything here. And this is what OpenAI returns. So it gives you choices. It gives you an ID. It gives you the model you used. And it also tells how many tokens did you use. This is important because based on this usage, OpenAI will send you a bill. Anyway, so as you can see, I got my message from data choices. So if I go here, I'll see I have an array. Within that array, I have messages, and within that message, I've got the content, and the role is assistant. Perfect. So this is how a basic API send and request will work with OpenAI. But notice one thing. If I go and refresh this, I should have a clear button here, but anyway. When I click on this, it takes some time to get the data. Notice, when I click, 1, 2, 3. It took around 1 to 3 seconds to get this data. Based on your application, you might not like this. You probably want data to be coming in as soon as a user clicks on that button. So what do? We stream the data. So let's see how we stream the data. So here, I'm going to say, instead of using URL as OpenAI text, I'm going to use the stream URL. So I'm going to put it here. And within the stream, it is a little bit different than normally fetching the data. So as you can see, I've got this basic setup for non-stream OpenAI. But when I go to stream, you see I got the payload and I say stream as true. When you send a stream as true, the data that is returned by OpenAI is not a JSON format. It is a little bit different. Therefore, you need to do additional step to parse the data. If you want to understand in detail what kind of data does OpenAI sends, you can go to this documentation and read about it. So if you go here, making request, if I go to Google, OpenAI API stream. So here they have given a Python example. You can see the data that is returned looks something like this. By all means, go and read about it. I'm going to put all the details in the description. But for our purpose, what we're going to do is we're going to pass this data so that our application can read it. So how do we do that? This part remains the same. So I'm saying send a request to OpenAI and URL is basically same. Then I said, if there's no response, if there is no body, then just return because something went wrong. You can do an error handling here. And once I receive the data, technically you don't need to do this. I do this to show you an example that once you receive some data from OpenAI, before sending it to your front end, where everybody can see what you receive or whatever you're doing, you can do some parsing of the data this way. So you can create a decoder and then you run a for loop for the response of the body as a chunk, and then you decode the data. And once you decode the data, what you basically do is something like this. I will let it be there for you to go through it and read about it. It basically fetching the data from here to the format that OpenAI returns. And once I receive some data which has been decoded by a decoder, again, you can go and read about how encoding and decoding represents when you stream a data. But that's not what we want to discuss here. So once you decode the data, I just write it back to the response like this. So basically, I'm not doing any, let's say, manipulation on it. But if you want, you could say, for example, since it's a string, you could say to, I don't know, uppercase or whatever you want to do with that string. And then I write it to the response. And once the response is done, I just say end the response. So once the for loop is over, we end it and return it. So this is how you basically read the streaming data. If I go back, now I want to use the URL stream. So we are using it here. But this will not work on the front end. So if I go and send this, you will see we got some error. It's saying unexpected token, blah, blah, blah. So what this means is you just cannot parse it the way you are doing it here as a standalone JSON. What I've done is I've created a new function which says stream OpenAI response chat. What I'm doing here is basically two things. I'm sending the response. So this is the response that we get. So I'm sending this response to this function. And I'm also sending this function that basically sets this variable. And that variable is then shown to the user like this. So let's see how this function works. So if I go in here, and again, I'm saying if there is no data, then just return. Again, you can do error handling until here. Then what I'm doing is simply reading the data. So the way I read data, I create a reader out of the data. The data is getting from the response.body. So I got the reader, I create a decoder, and then I say while true, read the data from the reader. So got a value and I got a value done. So done is a Boolean value, true or false. Then I decode the data using the value. So I got a chunk of value that was returned by OpenAI. I'm saying if done. So basically, if everything came in one go, sometimes if data is too small, OpenAI will send everything in one go. And then I basically call a function to clean the chunk of data, which basically is this using very simple regular expressions to clean the data. If you want, you can print this chunk of value to see how the original data came in. And then all I'm saying is if the data came in one go, then just set it to my function. And if that is not true, then basically means I'm getting the data in step-by-step manner. So while true, clean the data and put it in the text. The text starts as a nothing, and then we start building it, and then I keep setting that text to that function. So if I go back, clear everything, click on this, then you see it comes one token at a time, and you see that it did not wait for 3 seconds to get the data. Awesome, right? So that's all I wanted to show you here. So this is all we wanted to discuss in this video. One thing I want to point out is when I wanted to use this data in production, let me show you what I mean by that. So if I go here and open an app that I created using OpenAI, which is fluxyai.com. Fluxy is basically your AI tutor. You can learn any subject from class 6 to 12 using a virtual AI tutor. So when I hosted this application, there are two things that you need to take care of. One, if you are worried about scaling, you need to use some sort of third party, right? So I am hosting this website on Vercel. If I go here, Vercel.com. So I am using Vercel to host my Fluxy AI, as you can see here. The problem when I host this is if you go to usage, you will see that whenever you run anything on the server side, so whenever you run anything as an API like we are doing here, Vercel or any of the hosting provider will cost you some money for it. Money part was okay, but especially for my case when I used the Vercel, when I was trying to stream the data, they were encoding the data additionally, whatever OpenAI provided. And therefore, to overcome that, you have two ways of doing it. Number one would be you take all of your server-side code and put it in some sort of API that you build, for example, using Python or something else. What I end up using is I used Firebase functions, but that was super easy. So I used all of this code, move it to functions provided by Firebase, and then instead of calling this API route, I started calling something like this: HTTPS, let's say Firebase my project API/test, and then I could just send all the data that I need to this API, and I was able to get the result. So if you're interested to learn how Firebase function, serverless function work, let me know in the comment section, and I will create that video for you so that you can make your app production ready. All right. Thank you very much for joining in, and I hope you learned something, you enjoyed this video. And if you did, don't forget to like the video, share and comment the video. When you do that, it's a zero cost effort from your side to help the channel. And when you like it, when you subscribe, YouTube understand that this video creates value, and then it will be shown to other people as well. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video.